Game of the Week. The Game of the Week is an in-depth look at a family-friendly game we think you should try if you get the chance. This week's game is Pirates of Maracaibo. Doug, give us the stats.
All right, published in 2024, at least the U.S. release was from Capstone Games. The designers are Ralph Bienert, Ryan Hendrickson, and Alexander Pfister, and the art is by Christian Fiore and Odysseus Stamaglu. I'm so bad at these names. Anywho, in Pirates of Maracaibo, players become swashbuckling ship captains by hiring the best crew, plundering the most treasure, and navigating the high seas in the Caribbean at the end of the 17th century. Over 3 rounds, players will take turns moving their ship token across 1 to 3 spaces and taking actions on the cards they stop on until one of the ships reaches the port of Maracaibo. Players must move their ship at least 1 column closer to the port on each turn and pay doubloons to any ship currently occupying the space that they end their turn on. These spaces include improvement, residence, and location cards. Acquiring improvement cards can give pirates one-time actions, permanent abilities, victory points, and ongoing income. Players purchase improvements by paying the cost in the upper left-hand corner and replacing the card with the next card from the draw deck. Although spendy, residence cards offer pirates the chance to trigger conditional scoring opportunities at the end of the game. And the first pirate to build each residence also receives 2 bonus victory points. Location cards allow players to upgrade their ship and take an additional action. Upgrade cubes enable you to upgrade your ship with one-time or permanent abilities. The actions on location cards allow you to go raid, bury treasure, and explore islands. Players can go raiding to gain points, doubloons, and treasure by rolling the aptly named raiding dice. After rolling the 3 raiding dice, players will select one of the dice and spend raid points based on the pip value of the chosen dice, plus any raiding bonuses they have acquired. Each treasure in the game, emeralds, gold, and pearls, are represented by island boards in the Caribbean. Although you cannot land on these islands, you can acquire cubes from them and increase the value of each treasure type by adding new cubes to the islands. Players can rack up even more points by burying treasure on their player board. Another action allows players to explore the islands on the exploration board. Players gain bonuses based on how far they progress and where they stop their trek. Each round ends when a player reaches Maracaibo on the exploration board, at which point players gain income and then move back to the start of the Caribbean. The game ends at the end of 3 rounds, and the pirate with the most victory points from improvement cards, exploration bonuses, residences, and completed quest cards wins the game. Pirates of Maracaibo is a 90-minute hobby game for 1 to 4 players, published in the U.S. by Capstone Games. So set sail, pull out ye fanciest peg leg, and prepare to talk like a pirate in this Euro-style game of treachery and booty. So that is briefly how you play Maracaibo. A little bit more tricky as a hobby game, and it's probably going to start at 12 plus.
Yeah, 12 or 14 even plus, but yeah.
So that's Pirates of Maracaibo. What do you like, Michael?
I love that no 2 games are the same. I love that in the multiple games that I've played, the finishes have been very close, yet the strategies from the players varied greatly during the game. And you can have one player who's racking up a ton of points during the game and another player who's loading up on quest cards, and 80% of their points are going to come after the game.
Yeah.
I really like that timing of how far do I want to go? When do I want to be the first one in to declare the end of the round? What's the payoff on the bonuses if I race to the end of the round versus if I stay out here and sail around a little bit more? For me, I prefer the base game. I've tried a few of the different modules that are out there on Board Game Arena, and there's just so much in that base game because the setup changes from game to game. It's different every time based on how those cards come out, right? So there's maybe I said a lot there, maybe I didn't say anything at all. One other thing that I just want to mention before I send it back to you, I love the upgrading the ship, Doug.
Yeah.
And in so many games like this, if there's a track to explore, I'm going to explore that track and try to race towards the end. And I feel like there are some design constraints that were put into the game that in order to do that, I was forced to upgrade my ship. And I really enjoyed the different upgrades and how they opened up other avenues to the game that I might not have experienced otherwise. So
Yeah, I love that this is a Euro pirate game. It's a thinky pirate game, and yet it still maintains a lot of the feelings that you would expect or get from a pirate game. There is still plundering and raiding. There is still assembling a crew to get those better abilities and upgrading your ship and exploring. And it still has, although the attacking, that's the one part that could kind of be missing, right? You would expect a pirate game to have take that, or I'm going to steal a whole bunch of stuff from you. That's not in this game. However, so there's not that direct take that type of, your plunder is now my plunder. The attacking or that feeling in the game is subtle, which is Michael getting to a location before I do. So it's like he's not stealing something that I've already acquired, but that threat of I hope he doesn't land, I hope he doesn't go to that space. I hope I can get that card first. And then even if he takes the card that I wanted, the card that he flips over may be good as well. And then I'm having that conversation is like, is it worth me to pay him to go onto that spot to get that card now? And so although it's not in your face, there is that subtle tension going on that feels piratey. The I got this before you got it, rather than I'm boarding your ship and taking all of your stuff, if that makes sense. And I like that. Sometimes there are pirate games, whether we talked about Pirates Cove or Viking Raiders is a similar type of theme of those are smash you in the teeth and I'm going to take your stuff type of games. We are going to battle. And there's a time and place for that. But I like that this game is different on that end.
Yeah, and I think, not to just jump ahead, but I do think what you're talking about, not that you said that it's missing, but there's an expansion that's going to be coming to North America this year. It's one of those things where it has a 2024 date on it, but I think it's coming out in the next few months here. The Commanders expansion that will involve, raid. The BGG description is a skilled captain, fort raids, and rum. What more could a pirate ask? And so I think the base game, there's so much goodness in that base game. And you could tell the skilled design work that went into it, that you can plug in modules and expansions and other things when you get those mechanics in the base game right. You touched on a really good point, and I didn't think of that, and I wish I would have had it in my notes because it was smart. But the interaction, some of it comes into the movement and the actions that players take. So there's not a moment of downtime, because while I'm still processing what I just did on my turn, whether it's upgrading my ship or exploring or actually figuring out how much money I actually have and did I do my math right, I'm also keeping an eye out for what the next person is doing and where they're going, and then it's your turn. And if we're in a 3-player game, all of a sudden it's back to me. It has some of that sense of like some of the Emerson Matsuuchi games that we talked about, over 100 episodes ago now, though, where I need to be told it's my turn. It's your turn again. It's your turn again. The turns are just so rapid in Pirates of Maracaibo.
Yeah, it looks like when you look at the board the first time through, it looks like there is a lot to take in. But just a simple limitation of you can have 1 to 3 movements limits your options. And that, to your point, most people know where they want to go by the time their turn rolls around. Yeah, it's because it's limited. Like, all right, these are the 4 or 5 places I can get to, because I have to move closer. So I can't stay in the column that I'm in. So I have to move closer, and those spots being narrowed down really cuts down any AP, and it is that, oh, okay, it's my turn. I know where I want to go. You're just kind of waiting. It's almost like after your first turn, you're like, I know where I want to go next. Hopefully it's still there. And if not, this is my second choice. So people are ready to go.
Yeah, and your incentives are narrow enough, right? So you don't have a ton of things to look at. And what I also like, there's most of the information is open, but those quest cards, you don't know what quest cards I have necessarily.
Yeah.
So there's just a little bit of private information to get people looking across the table and thinking, well, is he going to go there? Where's he trying to get points? Yeah, this is a good one, Doug.
Yep. The other things is that you mentioned I love gaining more abilities as you go and just kind of ramping up. As far as things to be aware of, there are a lot of icons in this game.
Yeah.
However, I think the rules are clear, and there's not a lot of ambiguity about what things mean. Once you find it, it's like I can have my own opinions on maybe I would have chosen a different icon for certain things. But once you know the icons, it's fairly straightforward as you go along. And I don't recall ever having any things of like, oh, you can't do that, or this is not going to work. It's a pretty well-designed game on that front.
Well, and to your point, it's a 2.8 on Board Game Geek. We have this as a hobby or light hobby, however you want to split the difference. I haven't gone to the rule book.
Yeah.
You taught the game. It was succinct and clear. I played the game, and I think that says a lot. Before we get into some of the skills or anything, any buyer beware or caveats or things to note about it?
No, the only thing I've got, I'm outside of the icons and being aware that there's a bunch in there, is there is a playmat for this game. It's not included with the game, and it's not really necessary. However, it does two things. One is it helps you lay out the cards to make the C the main game board, which is nice. And because it is like a C background and blends in with the C cards, it really does give you a good like open sea feeling. And I haven't played without it, so I don't know, but I feel like I do feel like there would be something a little missing if it wasn't.
The playmat's really good. It's really good, especially just knowing where the next card comes in. That card flipping, I get. I'm kind of clumsy by nature, and just having a precise place to place the next card,
yeah.
I appreciate that. And I know a board game gives you that, but sometimes the cards on cardboard, things are sliding around them, islands are running into each other.
Yeah. Well, and that the card-based board essentially does add a lot of variety in the way that the islands are constructed and come out onto the board and play, and you are taking some out, and you may never see some during a game. So there is a lot of variety, and I think this is one of those games that sometimes publishers and designers can go overboard with, oh, look at all of the variety and options at this. This one is a good one, which is like you're shuffling the deck and you're not sure what's coming out. There's 10 and you're going to take 5 of them and use them in the game. And yes, you would have to play the game so many times to be like, oh, I guess this one's not in the game this time, which would be insane. So this is a good, approachable variety that keeps it mixed up, where if this was just on a straight board with set islands, I can't imagine how fast it would feel samey, and it'd be like, oh, okay, well, this is the predominant strategy, or I'm going to do this every time. So I like
think
that mix-up.
There's multiple winning strategies, is what you're saying, right?
Yeah.
From game to game. How about skills, Doug?
Well, the big one I think is the observation in keeping an eye on what the other players are doing, what islands might be available for you. But that leads into like the tactical thinking, is because with that ever-changing board, you don't know what's coming out in the space that somebody else just took an upgrade card from. And maybe your options just blew wide open of like, oh, I want to explore, but there's no cards, there's no place I can go to explore on this turn. And then Michael goes somewhere and reveals a new card, and all of a sudden there's an explore option. And so you have to be ready to take advantage of those when they pop up. So I think this is a really good tactical thinking game, just pivoting on what's available.
Yeah, and that risk management. It's turn to turn from about the third turn in of, well, I can go in first to end the round, and then I'm going to get an extra bonus, or I could stay out here at C. But if I stay out here at C and the other two that I'm playing with go in, I'm kind of stuck. And like you just said as well, sometimes knowing when to go after certain treasures, because there's 3 different resources. It's a hobby level game. We didn't get into everything, right, that there's to cover, but just that there's a low level stress of risk layered throughout the game that I really enjoy.
Yeah.
Because there's a sense of I'll be able to get to that eventually. I'm smart enough to be able to drive the value of the pearls down only to drive them up later. And so you have those different economic decisions too that I don't always get in a pirate themed game, and I don't always get in a Euro, and I feel like I'm getting them in this game in abundance.
Yeah, the other two that kind of go together for me is the logistics, which I think is piggybacking on what you're kind of talking about, which is I do have some of these overarching strategies of, okay, I'm kind of invested in this, or I have certain quests, and it's like, how am I going to accomplish those in what order, and do I have enough time to accomplish those, and how that happens. And one of the ways that I really enjoy the next skill that I have, which is spatial perception, because I think it ties into that a little bit, is when you're talking about like tile placement games, it's like, oh, will this fit there, or will that do there? And we're talking about, can you visually, in your mentally rotate a tile and figure out where it's going to go on the board before you even place it, right? There's that level of spatial perception. This one, what I like about it is that it's that mental thing of imagining your boat is like, oh, I can get here. Okay, I could move there. And you're doing it while other people are taking your turns, right? We talked about that kind of planning in between, and then it's your turn. But just that simple spatial awareness and perception to be able to imagine your boat, like, I can get here without having to pick up your boat and move it to those places, that is going on the entire game.
Yep.
So if you're, you got a younger player, a 12-year-old or a 10-year-old or whatever who can get to play this game, they're going to be doing this on their off time. And I think that's a great skill of visualizing, okay, I can get to that card, I could get to this card, and what can I do with that? Which then piggies back to that the logistics of how am I accomplishing what I need to accomplish.
Yeah, you covered a lot of skills there, and it's a well-designed game. It's a fun game. It's hard to believe. I think this is the first game of Alexander Pfister that we've covered as a game of the week.
Yeah.
And part of that is because of it is fairly accessible. Even though it is a hobby game, even though you could be playing for up to an hour if you're playing with your family, rules are straightforward, fairly digestible and understandable. You can watch a video, get this thing up and running. So it's glad we got to talk about it today, Doug.
Yep, so that is our game of the week, Pirates of Maracaibo from Capstone Games. Let's move on to the School of Gaming.